Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 151, The Hobbit, number 36 of Exploring Tolkien. The penultimate episode of The Hobbit. The penultimate episode of the chapters of The Hobbit. I think
right.
we'll do one
We're gonna do a special episode at the end there. But.
Yeah, and it's been a journey, man. It's been a year and a half. I didn't think we'd go through this. Now we did. I will blame the Rings of Power for about 2 months of time that we had to waste on reviewing. Not waste. It was interesting discussions. We got Dan involved too back in the day last year. But yeah, that put a little wrinkle into our plans. But we're gonna finish this up. We're down finally at the what do they call it? The denouement of the Hobbit, and getting down into Bilbo making his way back, and having some interesting discussions with Thorin, and I think even more so, the Elvenking. That one really. When I sat down to think about like the way they interacted, I'm like, one, that would have been really interesting in the films. Two, what? So we'll talk about that. Before we do, I want to remind everybody, if I can get my little media asset showing here, that we have a membership. You can go to theonering.com/member, become a member. It's $4 a month. First month is free. You get the extended podcast, and we are recording this a little bit late. Supposedly, this is going to go out tomorrow, which is Tuesday, November 25th. But we're recording it Monday. Yeah, and we're doing a chat tonight, so you guys all missed it again by not coming a member. It's so sad.
Do we have a calendar on the website?
I don't have a calendar, but if you're a member, you get an email every single time. When that you gotta get a warning email a couple days beforehand, and then a 1 hour beforehand you also get another email to do it. But yeah, every once a month we do it, and this is usually closer to the end of the month. It's 2 days before Thanksgiving. Whoa, wait, 3 days before Thanksgiving, and we'll do that. But yeah, go to theonering.com/member or theonering.com/Patreon, and you can become a member. It's $4 a month, or go above and beyond like Colt, Lynn, and Rich, who do more to keep us going. And we thank you guys for your deep and abiding support. It's been great. We love it.
And for the sharp-eyed among you, there will come a magic second in a little bit here where the correct chapter number and episode number will appear in the background instead of the last one.
Oh, so, dude, look at that. You ain't joking. Wait, there. Okay, I got rid of it. Yeah, we're not on chapter 17. Hey, like I said, we're late on this here. And now I'm gonna just while you give the overview for the Hobbit.
The magic will happen in the background.
Right. I had chapter 17 still up, and we're on chapter.
So as Jonathan mentioned, we're on
18.
chapter 18 of 19 according to Tolkien. Although there will be a final episode that we do something special that we will describe a little later on. But this is chapter 18.
But Michael, you forgot.
Oh wait, we're missing.
Hobbit facts.
Yup.
Sorry. See, at least I had that under control. Maybe not the images behind us, but the Hobbit facts are here. Did you know? And I'm sure you probably did after looking at some of the notes that we can see from the Hobbit. Particularly, this is from the annotated Hobbit. That the word berserker means bare-shirted.
Like, yes, and I did actually know that before, but that's because I'm a nerd and Old English and such, Middle English, and yes, but berserkers, which have a long tradition, picked up and twisted, as is their wont by institutions like Dungeons and Dragons and such, and other media. But berserkers have a long tradition in Nordic culture. But essentially, Tolkien is doing his own tapping into that with Beorn, which is awesome. Because I like when Tolkien does it way more than when Hollywood does it.
Yeah, it's the idea that it actually, like, Beorn is a bear and he's also a berserker, and he kind of goes absolutely mad wild right in this chapter. He doesn't hold back at all. In fact, he kind of gets even more bigger than before. So he's not only a shapeshifter, he's an entire size shifter. He can apparently get even larger and scarier. But this is actually like I think, let's see, here's the note. Christopher Tolkien in the Saga of King Hydric the Wise implies that perhaps that some berserkers disguise themselves actually as bears. They would put on like they would look like bears. So not only was it that they would go crazy like a bear who is attacking and being attacked by perhaps even its only enemy, another bear, but they would actually dress up as bears to inject that fear and to actually probably even more so like feel the fire of a battle upon them even more. Anyway, it was I just love that idea. I didn't know it was bear shirted, but Beorn bear, he's a bear shirted man. He is actually a shapeshifter that wears the skin of a bear, but it's actually his real skin too.
And no moral subjectivist does not mean that it's also possible that he's a man-shirted bear. So he is indeed a man, not a bear in disguise that wears the skin of the man. Because like I feel like this is like a typical modern thing. Well, so he switches back. Well, what if he's really a bear that wears the skin of a man? So anyway, no, Tolkien's very clear that Beorn is his real, like his form. His physical form can be one thing or the other, but he is Beorn and he is a man, and he, like, even his legacy, as we see it find out in this chapter, is one which centers around him leading men. He's a man. So anyway,
yeah. All right. So that's one. I have a second one too. A second Hobbit fact. So
cool.
Should have said.
Let's do it.
In the original story, in his original draft, Fili and Kili survived. Did you know that?
I wish it was the original draft. I find it irritating. That's one of the few irritations about the ending of The Hobbit that I have, which is the fact that the two characters of the dwarves besides Thorin that we care about the most, like all the ones we care about except Balin, die. And Balin is only like kind of an afterthought. Like he's a guy that talks to. Well, we don't see, like we're kind of impressed by the youth and the vigor and the actions of Fili and Kili, and of course Thorin is the center point. And all the ones the dwarves that Tolkien puts the most time into, he just kills in this battle.
Yeah.
With the perhaps arguable exception of Balin. But it's
and they're the only ones.
Did it say why he changed his mind?
I didn't know. He just he just changed it.
He never made it clear.
Maybe he wanted the entire line of Thorin killed off so Dane could come in. That would be the only thing I could think
that
of.
Actually, that's interesting. I wonder if Dane would have come in. I don't know how dwarven lineage works, actually.
Yeah. No.
Isn't Dane his cousin? Thorin's cousin?
Yes.
I think he is.
So
Fili and Kili may not be old enough to take on Erebor, but maybe they would have been, and maybe that was the reason why he did it. Could be. Seems a little Games of Thrones-ish, but for me. But,
I was just going to say maybe Tolkien was reading George R. R. Martin and decided to kill off his main characters.
Right. I mean, I do like the fact that like Tolkien is not afraid to take out main characters, of course, as we know from Boromir and Thorin and Fili and Kili being the dwarves, and it's not a thing which. It doesn't feel like a teenager graphic novel or anything like that where all the main characters always survive and everything.
No,
there are a lot of characters, but
yeah. At the very least, we like Peter Jackson should have changed it. Maybe kept them alive and then killed off Toriel at the end. That would have been better.
Yeah, you mean who did not exist?
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, let's get into the story. Chapter 18. Bam. There you go, Michael. All fixed and good in the background. Chapter 18, The Return Journey, second to last episode, penultimate chapter in The Hobbit. Michael, would you give us the pleasure of an overview of this chapter?
Sure. I don't know about the pleasure part, but y'all are going to listen to this.
I'll cut you short. Don't worry.
For starters, this is not actually, most of the chapter is not about the return journey. It turns out over 75% of the chapter is about what happened during the battle and before they leave. And then like 20 to 25% is the return journey. So anyway, this chapter
is funny. It is just real fast. It is funny. He's like, I already call it the return journey. We'll call it the last stage for the last episode, for the last chapter. It's like exactly. Ran out of like, we're not there yet, but it's now the last stage of the return journey.
Something else that implies completion of my book. Okay. So 3 parts essentially to this chapter. The first part is what happens after Bilbo wakes up and he's found by one of the men, and first he's found but isn't found because he's still wearing his ring and he doesn't realize it. So after he takes off his ring, he's carried by one of these men easily down to the camp. He sees an injured Gandalf and he gets to speak to Thorin moments before Thorin dies. So that's the first part of it, is this whole completion of the Bilbo part of the war story. Now all he knows at this point is that the goblins have lost and doesn't appear to be any more goblins, and that everyone is sad. So And then, of course, we have the conversation between him and Thorin, which you and I will get into, which I think is very important. That's the first part of this chapter. The second part of the chapter is the author telling us what happened during the battle. So we as the reader get to catch up on all the events. It isn't told from the perspective of Bilbo. It's just, here's what happened. And that's where we hear about Beorn and the conclusion of what the Eagles did and what Beorn did, and all the way through victory, and then what happened between Dane and the Eagles, and and the Elvenking, what he did for Thorin, and anyway, and that we learned about the fate of Fili and Kili, etc. So, and the division of the treasure, which can't have a dwarven tale of dragon slaying and treasure reckoning without the division of the treasure, which we get at the end. So then finally we get the third part of the journey, and so we do get the tail end of Bilbo's interactions at that end of that second part. So it's kind of like the wrapping up of the battle and the effects of the battle and the division of the treasure and who died and what honors were paid, and then we have the actual return journey, or at least most of it. So, and then we have what happened when Bilbo begins to travel back home up to Mirkwood, but he will not go through Mirkwood, and he and Gandalf and Beorn instead go around Mirkwood. And so we have that and some notes about that part of the journey, and then all the way to Rivendell. And that is where the chapter ends, as they've arrived at Rivendell.
I like how you split it up into 3 chapters or 3 parts, because it gives us a nice way of approaching this. So I think let's start with obviously the first part where Bilbo is found. Once again, I think it's a little funny that he forgot about his ring, because in Peter Jackson's films, the ring doesn't do what it does to you're not in this upside down world. Mm-hmm. With wind and blowing and visions of. I
mean, Peter Jackson was trapped by his own by doing Lord of the Rings first, right? So
right. But I do like Bilbo's statement. I wonder what has happened. At any rate, I'm not yet one of the fallen heroes. But I suppose there's still time enough for that. It's sort of like he's stuck in his own realism, like that Baggins' tookishness. It fights against each other to give him these funny statements of like awareness of where he is, and then these funny asides to what might happen that just they're like, oh yeah, like it's almost like looking at himself from a third person perspective.
And that third person, do you think that the pessimistic outlook of what it might still all end badly sort of outlook, is that the Tookish side or the Baggins side?
I think it's the Tookish side and Baggins side competing, in the sense that like he's trying to make light of it from the Baggins side, but it's a very serious statement, sort of at the Tookish side, right? That he wants to, that he's part of the bigger story, but the Baggins side wants to make it feel okay, so it's almost an offhanded comment.
Okay, that is very interesting. I take the reverse view.
Really?
Because I think the Tookish side is more optimistic, because that's why you set out on an adventure, because adventures are good, and the excitement of things is something that you embrace. Whereas the Baggins side is really pessimistic about the nature of adventures and would always presume, I think, that the adventure ends bad.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Ends badly. Baggins side wants the home and the hearth, and whenever it considers things like battles, it's, I think, always going to look at it negatively. It's going to be like, yeah, well, we can still die. But I agree with you that there's an interplay, because the Tookish side is pointing out the storyline part. Like we're in this this great story that we were caught in, and who knows what our part's going to be by the end. So I can see it either way, but I do think the Baggins side is the one. Like right now, I like what you started to say there, because right now in this chapter we have, I think, the biggest wrestling, like open wrestling between the Tookish and the Baggins side. And the Baggins side is winning. Like the Baggins side is where he really wants to go home, that's starting to win.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see how that side of Bilbo, the way you read that. I think I read that as like, it's the Baggins side uncomfortable in the situation and trying to figure out a mental way out of it. Yeah, but
that's,
I
can see that.
Sense either way. All right, so he's
Gandalf
found
for the only time in Tolkien's entire, even when Gandalf does, talks about how he was imprisoned by Saruman in the Tower, for example, in Lord of the Rings. We never see Gandalf actually hurt, I don't think.
Yes, his arm was in a sling. That struck me too.
Yeah, like Gandalf is, even though he's in danger and he's fighting and he's in battles in both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, we don't actually see him with that vulnerability of like, I've been wounded and need a sling to hold my arm. Maybe I don't know if it's a broken arm or a flesh wound, a cut across the arm or something. Who knows? But anyway.
Yeah, interesting that it makes me wonder in the sense, right? Not the same wizard, even in a way that he would have been in the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And we get through that. Although he does make this statement that reminded me of the Lord of the Rings. I began to wonder, he says, if even your luck would see you through. And I think it's sort of that, right? If luck you call it, if fortune you call it. It's providence, right? It's like, he sees that there's something, and maybe this is why, that Bilbo was chosen. There was something lucky, there was something greater than just being a hobbit or a character, right? And that's maybe why he chose him. But Gandalf essentially thought that Bilbo would be seen through, because he says, I began to wonder if even your luck would see you through. He expected him to survive.
Right. His luck, like you say, if luck you call it. Gandalf is a big fan of like using those kinds of phrases to talk about providence. But but again, it might be like an earlier firm form of Gandalf too, where it might just be luck. Who knows? But
true
for Tolkien at this time.
But it means that Gandalf has recognized how lucky he truly is.
Yeah, but I am going to lean towards your reading of it there too with the luck part, because in this chapter we see Tolkien. I see this chapter, obviously on the surface level, it's Bilbo begins the return journey, and it's the narration of how the Battle of the Five Armies ended. So that's on the surface level. But I see the whole chapter's work as really kind of Tolkien beginning to unfold his world for Lord of the Rings. Like he tells us the sort of the kind of end story to a bunch of different races, sort of here's where they are at this point in the story. And he kind of sets up these kingdoms. So by the end of this chapter, we have an idea of the Elvish kingdom. We have an idea of the terrible destruction wreaked upon the goblins of the north, and we have the state of the dwarves of the Iron Hills and Erebor. We have an idea about the what's happening now with the men of Lake Town and the rebuilding of Dale, and their relations with the elves, and then of course Beorn and his fate and what he does, which is much more than just help them win a battle by killing Bolg. But so it's Tolkien. I see it as Tolkien just telling us, while he's telling us Bilbo went home, he's telling us about his world and kind of setting the background for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's get into the discussion between Thorin and Bilbo.
Yep. My favorite, by the way, title ever for hobbits. Hobbitla, the Rohirric name, is my second favorite, but my favorite title ever given to a hobbit is the one Thorin gives Bilbo in his last words.
Child of the Kindly West?
Yes, Child of the Kindly West, because it captures what hobbits are. They have this sort of childlike bravery and hope in them, the strength in them that Tolkien leans into in their capacity to bear the ring when everyone else would have fallen in Lord of the Rings. But Child of the Kindly West is just a beautiful name for Bilbo, and that's my favorite.
And I think West is capitalized there. And I think it's not just, you live in the western part of Middle Earth. I think it's referring to further west, all the way in Valinor. At this point, he was thinking about that too. And so somehow he's a child of that west.
That's cool. Too. I didn't think of that. That's pretty cool, because that would speak to the spiritual side of hobbits. But then I see the way I took the capitalization of West, which I don't think these are at odds. I think they could actually be understood together, is like and Tolkien goes into this later on about the hobbits being protected by the Rangers of the North. Like, they are children of the West, like the West being the kingdom of God, of the Númenóreans, the good Númenóreans, the Dunedain. And they only exist, and they are children in a way. They love the good things, but they're not beset in the Shire by all of the troubles and sufferings of the world, because they're protected like children are protected. But who are they protected by? They're protected by the kingdom of the West, which is the kingdom of the Dunedain. Arnor technically, or the remnants of Arnor in the case of the Rangers. So anyway, I love that's the way I took the word west there. But I like your read too, the spiritual take on it. That's cool.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because that was the first thought that hit my mind. But I don't know if the capital W means anything. I'm just looking real fast if there's anything else where the word west is capitalized. No, interesting. He capitalizes it.
He does.
He does, but he doesn't all the time. So he says the Misty Mountains in the west, capital W. This is in the foreword. And then, let's see. Yeah. It's the High Elves of the West, where it was a capital W. They made it's almost like referring to the first age before, when with Beleriand, when that still existed. Far away in the west, coming from the east and west. Yeah. So it's sort of like anytime he refers to something that is a geographical location that is sort of like in his brain, that's when he says west with a capital W. But otherwise, there's a lot of lowercase wests too. West over the river, he turned west. So anytime it's a location, actually, it looks like he just capitalizes it as a W. So maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I still like the idea.
Well, I don't think you are, because Tolkien himself, like, this is the kind of thing where I don't think that he necessarily was thinking the Valar when he says the West, child of the West.
Yeah.
I think, though, that like so many things, he's definitely, when you capitalize a place like that, you're giving it a kind of prominence and a history. You're saying it's a thing which has its own life to it in a way. It has its own background and heritage. It has its own principles to it. And I easily see Tolkien making that connection with the West as used in the Silmarillion, which is very clearly linked with the Valar and Valinor, etc.
Yeah. It's I love this. These are some of the discussions that I love, because it's sort of like he knew there was a greater part of the story than he was telling in a way, and it was always there sitting on the edges and hadn't completely at the end. I don't think it hadn't completely intruded into the story yet, but he wanted it to. He wanted.
Yes, and he invites his readers to it. He isn't like someone. He isn't someone that just sort of reveals random facts. They have a picture, and then as you go further in the story, they're like, and they uncover a part of the picture, and here's this part, and then slide away this part. For Tolkien, the creation of Middle Earth is more of a invitation to discovery, where he's definitely the storyteller, but he's kind of inviting our imaginations to build with his. And I've always loved that about Tolkien.
Yeah, subcreation.
Yes. Yes.
So this is where Thorin passes away, right? He says, if more of us valued good food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. Farewell.
Thorin is almost redeemed in my eyes by this final paragraph and everything. Like it's one of the beautiful statements about hobbits too that just kind of carries on. If the statement of more of us. And originally, as the annotated Hobbit points out, it was if more men, and then Tolkien in the 1951 edition switched it to more of us, because obviously dwarves are. Yeah. That wouldn't make much sense for Thorin to be if more men. But what that tells me is that Tolkien is shifted. He shifted the narrative voice there. Like he's clearly intending to tell a lesson. Like he's giving a lesson there, so in his first writing, he was like, if more men, like you can imagine him saying that to his children as he's finishing the story in the 1930s, where he gets to the part about Thorin's death. And he said, if more men valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. I mean, that's a solidly true statement. That would be, and that Tolkien clearly believes. Now, and then of course he switches the wording because it wouldn't make much sense for Thorin to be saying men, but.
And I think Thorin earns it in his character arc, right? It's not like it comes suddenly. Like we didn't see him get struck down by arrows and swords and axes, but it's a point at which you realize he's lost everything in his quest for gold. He's lost his friends. He's lost his family now, Kili and Fili. He's lost the one person that was able to essentially steal things from the dragon. And now he has to realize it's all for naught without valuing food and cheer, which is essentially saying valuing friends and song and art and things that are greater and higher in life. And he says it so succinctly. I do. I think he's totally redeemed here at this point. I don't have any animosity towards him like I did through the earlier chapters when he's Bilbo and not being a leader at all.
Now, what I will say is that it's very interesting. Thorin's, like, he remains a dwarf because although I agree with you that he is, and I believe in redemption in my metaphysical view of the universe, and I think Tolkien's is very close there. But he says, it's really interesting. He says, I go now to the halls of waiting to sit beside my fathers until the world is renewed, which is a cool statement because it's kind of giving you at least what the dwarves believed was their fate after their death, and according in Tolkien's world. It's kind of it is kind of not an Anglo-Saxon, more of a Nordic view. Since I leave now all gold and silver and go where it is of little worth, I wish to part in friendship from you, and I would take back my words and deeds at the gate. I find in there a small hint of, like, he's still a dwarf, because it's not that he says, oh, I've come to realize gold and silver are not worth breaking a friendship over. He says, since I'm now going where they're worthless, now I wish to part.
This is the true glass half full, half empty perspective on Thorin here. Like, he can't. The only reason he's given up, he's like, God dang it, I can't take it with me. So I guess I have to reconcile.
I do think there's a realization there, but I think even the way he words it, we recently at church we read the Bible. One of the passages that came up was the one about where God is talking to the man who's built up all this wealth in his life, and he says, the man says to himself, "What shall I do? I'm now going to enjoy my wealth and grow it." And God says to him, "Fool, for tonight your life will be required of you." And basically, like, this is the lesson of, you can't take it with you when you go. It's the important things are not about the accumulation of wealth. And so I see that as what Thorin's going through here.
Yeah.
But with a dwarvish like spin on it, like pointing out, yeah, it's pretty important. But now I'm at the end, I'm realizing, okay, he doesn't want to hold up the importance of gold. And maybe, in fact, like, when we see the division of, it's funny because, like, my idea, when I read, like, one page later when they're talking about how the gold was divided up, and it did not get divided up the way I would have thought, according to was deserved according to the actions of the players, and we can get to that in a minute. But yeah. So what were you going to say though? Thorin's last words.
But isn't that really? I mean, all of us. Like, at some point, the regret you have at the things that you've lost that were worthless because the only thing you can't get back is time, and well, not the only thing, but it makes for a good pithy statement. But I think he's just being completely honest, right? That is truly a thought that will go through many of our minds as something we have lost that we can't get back, and you realize, oh, it was kind of worthless since I can't get it anymore. This is the real me now, I understand the real ramifications of pursuing things that are worthless because they are temporal, and there's no need to focus on that. In any case, that's a deeper discussion. Okay, so he's dead, he's gone, and
so Bilbo goes to mourn, and the narrator does, like Tolkien does, a thing where, now that Bilbo's mourning, I'm going to tell you about what really happened in the battles.
But before we get to that, he does say, you made a great mess of that business with the stone, and there was a battle in spite of all your efforts. Does Bilbo make things worse? Was he wrong in trying to give the Arkenstone back to the elves? Did he actually make things worse by stealing the Arkenstone and taking it to Bard and the Elvenking? Did he make a greater mess of things because of that?
So let's imagine what would have happened if he hadn't done that.
Yeah.
What if he hadn't done that? It's the very day after Thorin is supposed to give an answer to Bard. And if Bilbo had stayed with the Arkenstone hidden, or even not, if he had given Thorin the Arkenstone back in the mountain, Dane and his warriors, especially the dwarven special forces that he talks about, they're like the 500 dwarves at the front that are the best, and they still would have come upon the elves and the men. There still would have been a conflict because their ultimate goals were like the Arkenstone. I don't see it changing anything as far as the mechanics of what happened between the dwarves and the elves and the men, or the free people's armies and the goblins. I don't see that making any difference.
I actually agree. Yeah. I don't think it changed much at all.
I think what we're seeing here is Bilbo's regret about the reaction that he got, because he considers Thorin a friend, and the reaction that he got, and like how his relationship with Thorin was worsened, and Thorin's extreme reaction to the discovery that the Arkenstone was now out of his grasp. And I think Bill was just regretting that interpersonal relationship.
Yeah, I was fishing for
no, it's a good question.
But he doesn't, giving him the Arkenstone doesn't actually change anything at all. Like, I don't think it would have changed Thorin's decision to leave the gates and join the battle either.
Exactly. Yeah, all would have been the same in that regard. And I think that is like Tolkien's showing us what we do. Like, I do that too. We're all tempted to do that, where when we replay in our minds what part we had in a big movement, or something major that happens, if we had something to do with it, we will tend to exaggerate for good or for ill what our actions brought about, from our own perspective. And I think that's just Bilbo doing it right here. It's like, well, maybe he regrets what happened with Thorin and the Arkenstone, so he's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe things would have been better. But then he says, but I suppose you can hardly be blamed for that. See, and there was a battle in spite of all your efforts to buy peace and quiet, but I suppose you can hardly be blamed for that. So he's realizing at the end, well, it's probably not about me. Probably not all about me.
So let's talk about the battle. The battle with the unexpected Beorn and the unexpected eagles, in a way.
Yes. Here's the cool thing. Not cool, but sort of funny. The eagles are always looked at as the eucatastrophe that comes in and saves the day. But in both cases, both in this case and when the eagles come at the Black Gate, I say they wouldn't have won the battle. In other words, it was another event which wins the battle. The eagles do save the free peoples, and if it weren't for the eagles, they would have lost, but the eagles are not sufficient. So that's what's interesting to me. The eagles are insufficient, and it says so very specifically here. You have to, I think, extrapolate at the Battle of the Black Gate that the eagles are insufficient, but I think it's easily done. Here it says that after telling us that the eagles have been watching the goblins, and then they themselves had gathered in great numbers when they saw the goblins doing it, it says, it was they who dislodged the goblins from the mountain slope. So this is during the battle itself, casting them over the precipices or driving them down, shrieking and bewildered among their foes. So for those of our listeners that remember from last episode, we were talking about the battle. We were talking about how essentially all the forces of elves and men that are on the slopes are engaged trying to fight off the goblins that are now above them, throwing rocks at them as well as below them. So they're unable to come to the help of Thorin and company down in the middle of the battle. So the eagles enable them to do that by dislodging the goblins from the tops of the slopes. But even with the eagles, they were still outnumbered. So in other words, the implication there is that wasn't going to be sufficient to win. And who makes it sufficient to win? Beorn. So Beorn finally appears. He breaks through the lines. He comes like a thunderclap. Like all these cool ways that Tolkien describes Beorn's entrance into the battle. Defends the body of Thorin, who isn't dead, but he's fallen, and carries it back, and then comes back to finish Beorn comes back to finish the job. Blasts through the Bolg's bodyguards, which were the thing that had stopped the free peoples. Like no one could break through the Bolg's bodyguard before, neither dwarf nor man, and kills Bolg himself, crushes him.
My gosh, I just think to the movies. Sorry, because I had to watch the entire Battle of the Five Armies. I think about what they did with with Beorn and the Eagles, and with Bolg, and was it Legolas who killed Bolg, or was it Toriel?
Legolas killed.
Yeah, no, Legolas killed Bolg. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He killed him on the falling weird tower that fell over to cross the chasm.
Yeah. And then Thorin killed the invented orc.
Yes, Azog.
Azog. I mean, he wasn't invented. Tolkien did have an Azog, but he did not live at that time. So
yeah, and I like that in the films. It makes it sort of clear that it's the eagles that change the tide of battle completely. That's the big change. That's the eucatastrophe involved in the battle. Whereas in here, it's really Beorn. And in the films, I don't even know since I haven't seen the regular theatrical edition in a while, how much Beorn actually makes it into there, if he is at all. But he's wreaking havoc there, but not to the degree even that Tolkien writes. And this is something we're going to talk about, actually, I think, at the end of this here in our extended podcast, which you can get to by going to thewonder.com/member, is that it seems like Beorn was that kind of character that Tolkien really loved, that he just wanted to tell more stories about, and he kind of does, at the end of this chapter. But it's something we're going to talk about and say, like, what would have a greater Beorn story looked like after The Hobbit and before The Lord of the Rings, and the things that he did that Tolkien does mention. Anyway, just want to bring that up.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. So the battle, the tide of the battle is turned, and it's sort of funny that once he bears Thorin away, his anger, his wrath was redoubled. Nothing could withstand him, and no weapon seemed to bite upon him. He scattered the bodyguard and pulled down Bolg himself and crushed him. That's nice. The crushing. Is it his jaws? Is it just like he's just stamping him into the ground?
Yeah,
there's nothing that stops him. I love that vision.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of ways to do that cinematically, which would be totally awesome. And I just was never impressed by Beorn in the movies. Like he just didn't look as powerful and impressive as I think Tolkien would have had Beorn be. And then of course he doesn't have a central place like Jackson just has his invented elves that were never there. I mean, look, I can say you can make an argument Legolas would have been there. Fine. Probably he would have almost definitely been there, but he wasn't a character with The Hobbit. So, but Tauriel is just a feminist invention, and then you have the whole Azog versus Thorin thing, which is just a bunch of Hollywood Rube Goldberg crap. It's just like Tolkien. How many times do we have to have this? Like, if you just respect, like nowadays, current time, people are going back and forth about movies like Wheel of Time, and like TV shows that were made like Wheel of Time and The Witcher and things like that, and always, of course, Rings of Power. That's our favorite one to bag on because it's about Tolkien, who's a better author than anyone of the people that made those others, from Martin to Jordan to I forget the Polish guy's name that made The Witcher, but it's the same mistake they make every time. It's like, we think we can write a better ending. We can do it better than the author. How about you just freaking respect what these authors... The reason they're great and people recognize them as great is because they know what they're doing. So how about you just tell that story? And if you have to add things in because they just, in a book, you don't have all the visuals that you have in a movie, so you got to add things in. Okay, fine. Just make it align with the story, but tell the freaking story. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm getting worked up because it irritates me. Like you were saying, like the scene with Beorn crushing Bolg, like blowing through his bodyguards. That could have been such an awesome scene because in truth, this is my contention about the Eucatastrophe part. The Eucatastrophe in The Hobbit is a simple equation. It's eagles plus Beorn. It's two things. It's not the eagles, just the eagles that save the free peoples. But anyway,
but it's Beorn, right? It's because Beorn has the ability to crush Bolg that scatters the orcs, scatters the goblins all around, and what did they say? They killed them into like all three parts, something like that.
He starts
three parts of the Goblin Warriors of the North.
So that's a really interesting statement. Before that line about that three parts of the Goblin Warriors of the North perished on that day. Let's get into that in a second. But Tolkien spends like most of a paragraph just describing them hunting down all the goblins that were scattered after Bolg was crushed. So he goes through in great geographic detail to talk about where they fled and how they were hunted down, Mirkwood and the Running River and and the Forest River and etc. So Tolkien is telling you, like, you can tell what he cares about in that regard. It's like showing you, look, you got to account for the fact that just because you win a battle doesn't mean that all the armies are scattered and are no longer a danger. So he goes to Great Lakes to tell us that. What do you think he means when he says songs have said that three parts of the Goblin Warriors of the North perished on that day?
I was going to ask you that question.
Okay.
Jeez.
No, well, I have an opinion.
I'm just wondering.
It's weird.
Okay. I mean, the songs have said, right? Three parts of the Goblin Warriors of the North perished on that day. I'm not like three parts is a hard distinguishing reference. I don't understand exactly what three parts means. 3 of 4, 3 of 10, 30%. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So exactly. So the question is, what's the whole of which those parts are parts? As you point out. Mm-hmm. And Tolkien, weird, like non-detailed. He just sort of presumes that we understand what that means. So. Or he didn't pay attention to it. He doesn't know. Like there's a side note where it's like songs have said blah blah blah. But those are kind of weird songs that are like talking about the percentages of how many how many goblins of the north. So he does zoom out in that statement because he says goblin warriors of the north. He doesn't say of the battle. So he says what you're talking about is the parts of all of this race of people, the warriors of these people. And so my guess is to go back to the oldest sort of cornerstone of ancient times, which is the Roman way of reckoning, where a lot of the English culture was based on. And that's where we get the word decimate, for example. To decimate something was to lose 1 part in 10 or 1/10. So I think the parts here, if I was forced to guess, I think 3 parts means 3 parts of 10. So 30%, which, by the way, and some people are like, oh, so 70% of the warriors are left. Actually, if it was 3 parts in 10, that would be a very impressive decimation, or even triple decimation, technically, of their warrior. To lose 30% of your fighting age males, essentially, is utterly crushing, because most of the warriors in a kingdom or in a land are are in small groups defending different points across, and they are rarely gathered all together into an army the way many of them would have been at this battle of the Five Armies. So to lose 30% of your basically entire the fighting age adults of your entire land is on serious, terrible blow. Now we know there were still some left and some worth fighting, because it talks about how later on how Beorn's people cleared out the Misty Mountains of the goblins.
It's interesting. Actually, I just came across this and doing a little bit of research. Gamling in The Lord of the Rings says something similar. He says this is in the Two Towers. Behind us in the caves of the deep are 3 parts of the folk of Westfold, old and young, children and women, said Gamling. But great store of food and many beasts and their fodder have also been gathered there. And some people think that when you use something like 3 parts, it's always 1 less than the whole.
Oh.
So, okay. But I don't know. It doesn't clarify what Gamling means by that either. But he uses that same phrase. So it is. But
it's funny, they use the exact same phrase. It's 3 parts. It's not 2 parts or 4 parts or 6 parts or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
So clearly, Tolkien has got some kind of phrase or some kind of usage of this that he's used to, and he presumes that everyone understands what that means. That would be the kind of question I'd love to ask, like Tom Shippey, for example, because I'm sure he knows. I'm sure he'd be able to pull out a bunch of quotes to show what that actually means. So whether it's 30% or 75% of the Goblin warriors, it's a significant blow to their ability to threaten people. So
to them, So they're decimated, and Dane decides that the Raven friendship isn't good enough for them. We don't want the small birds now. So
we're upgrading.
We're upgrading.
We're leveling up to the big birds.
to the giant eagles. Dane has crowned their chief, the chief of the eagles, with gold and sworn friendship with them forever. And I thought that was an interesting point that Dane recognizes them. We just kind of like this is why in the films they're just sort of this afterthought that is added because it's cool, again, not really added because it adds meaning and import to the story, other than
right. They're treated less like a people in the movie than like something cool.
Right. And this is at the point where Bilbo says, I am sorry. About the eagles. Anyway, all right, let me rephrase this whole thing. He says, "Where are the eagles?" And some are in the hunt, said the wizard, but most have gone back to the eyries. "I am sorry," Bilbo says. "I mean, I should have liked to see them again. Perhaps I should see them on my way home, and I suppose I shall be going home again soon." And the wizard says, "As soon as you like." So really the battle's over, and he's like, I'm ready. I want to go home.
I'm going home.
I'm done. This is the Baggins side being like, adventure is really fun, really nice, but you know what? Home, hearth, good food, little merriness. I could do with some of that. And this is when essentially, I don't know if we want to talk about the funeral of Thorin at all, but this is where he and the Elvenking, like if we want to get into that third sort of discussion he has, and granted he leaves, right? And it's okay. So let's talk about the Elvenking, like what he does at the funeral too. He lays Orcrist, the Elvish sword that had been taken from Thorin captivity, back on his tomb, right? Yeah. So he has the Arkenstone, he has Orcrist, and the Elvenking, like this is the thing that bothered me probably the most when it comes to characters in the films. He is such a jerk in the films. He is a selfish, self-absorbed, petty king. And in here, like, he's redeemed, like Thorin is redeemed, he is redeemed, and he makes sacrifices, and he sees the value of Thorin, and that never happens in the films. And you see that right here as he lays Orcrist upon Thorin's tomb there too.
Yeah, you know what I always thought would have been cool in the movies, which of course they didn't do, was have the Elvenking wield Orcrist in the battle.
Ooh,
because of course it's an elvish sword from Gondolin, and so it would be right for the king of the elves of Mirkwood to wield it and then give it up, of course, to the tomb of Thorin at the end. And it's pretty cool that basically Orcrist then functions as the ring doorbell of the Lonely Mountain for the rest of its time, because it says that it would glow, warning of enemies that were nearby, so that the people of
so the ring cameras were focused on Thorin's tomb to see when it starts glowing, and then they'll know.
And it would glow whenever there's enemies near the Lonely Mountain. So anyway, but it was like, that would have been super cool to see, like the tomb of Thorin, probably with some shafts drilled from the outside, like shining on his tomb, and Orcrist laid on top, and it would have been really awesome visual.
Yeah, they just do this sort of like musical chairs walking around his tomb type of thing with all the characters in it, and that's about it in the films. Yeah,
I truly do not even remember any of this. Maybe this is the extended edition.
It's perfectly fine.
I put it all out of my mind.
No need to, because Dane's a great king now. He is not the Thorin, the gold fevered Thorin that we've known. Tolkien actually makes the point that he dealt his treasure well. So he gave all the shares to Balin and Dwalin, Dori, Nori, Ori, Owen, Goen, everybody. And then a 14th share he kept for Bard. All right. Even a 14th share was exceedingly greater than that of many mortals. From that treasure, Bard sent much gold to the Master of Lake Town, and he rewarded his followers and friends freely. Again, the Master of Lake Town survived, and somehow that phrase, he rewarded his followers and friends freely. Is that the Master of Lake Town rewarding his followers and friends easily, or is that Bard rewarding his followers and friends easily?
No, because it's Bard, because the he that he goes on to talk about is the nominative subject of the sentence continues in the next sentence. Okay. The Elvenking, he gave the emerald. So it's always what Bard's doing with it. But I agree with you. Okay. But I think it's even more clear with the semicolon after the Lake Town. So that thought's ended. Bard sent much gold to the Master of Lake Town. End thought. Yeah. Okay. And Bard rewarded his followers and friends freely. Because we don't even show, like, there's the Master of Lake Town isn't even shown to have friends, so there's not.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. No, I don't think it was Bard either, but the way it's written, if you read it fast enough, you can be like, oh wait.
Yeah, exactly. No, I actually thought that when I was a kid. I thought the first time I read it, I thought that exact thing. Before we get to what he did with the Elvenking, which I think is cool, I also thought, until I read it carefully, for many times reading through this, that each of the dwarves that went on the journey with Bilbo were owed a 14th share. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't say that, and I don't think that's the case. And the reason it says there was no longer any question of dividing the hoard in such shares as had been planned to Balin and Dwalin, and Dori and Nori and Ori, and Oin and Gloin, and Bifur and Boffer and Bomber, or to Bilbo. Yet a 14th share of all the silver. Yeah. So the 14th share idea, which was part of Bilbo's contract, is separated from that, and it doesn't say they all got a 14th share, which, by the way, would have made sense. They wouldn't get the 14th share. Why would rando dwarves who joined Thorin be awarded a 14th of his kingdom just for making it through alive? Point.
Right. And later he does say to Bilbo, "This treasure is as much yours as it is mine, though old agreements cannot stand, since so many have a claim in its winning and defense." So I would guess you would say, right, that is his.
That's
how
true.
did he say it? He made it. He was a. Let me get the right. Oh no, now I lost it. But he divided it up equally, right? What does he say? I thought I had
about the dwarven shares or what?
Dane dealt his treasure well. So
yes,
it doesn't mean he dealt it based on the previously signed contracts, but he dealt it well.
Yeah. But I always thought the pre-select contract, like in overly simplistic, like everybody gets 14 shares because there's 14 of them, and Bilbo got a 14 share, so that means all the. Yeah. But that's not what it's saying at all. It's just saying whatever their shares were supposed to have been, they got them. Also, it's a problematic because it meant that Thorin himself would have only kept 1/14 of all the wealth of the king under the as the king under the mountain.
That's a good point. It'd be what's.
And it also points out that that there's things given separate from the dividing up of the percentage wise, because it says. To the Elven king, this is back to Bard, gave the emeralds of Girion, such jewels as he most loved, which Dane had restored to him. So basically, Dane's said, yes, these are yours. So Dane honors the argument that Bard gives. Remember, we were talking about how Bard gives
Thorin at the gate. You're right.
He gives 3 arguments at the gate for why you should give up some of your treasure. The first is that you didn't kill the dragon, I did. That's the right of conquest sort of argument, or the heroism argument. Yeah. The second is part of this treasure isn't yours. It's mine and my followers of Dale, like the Dale men's treasure, the Lord Girion, everything Girion had and his people, that's mine, that's not yours. And the third argument was you should feel some mercy and be generous with your gold upon people that have suffered on your behalf. So that was the middle argument about some of this treasure isn't actually yours. It's Smaug gathered it from Girion and his people, and it looks like Dane, at least it's implied that Dane respects that argument because he's given back the jewels at least, and probably other stuff too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that he says then to Bilbo that he would reward him most richly of all. It seems odd to me that he would say that in a way, because I don't know if Dane would see him as having such a hold on that much of the treasure. I don't know. Doesn't it seem weird to you that the guy who betrayed his cousin is the guy he wants to reward most richly of all for not really doing anything in the battle? I don't know.
Okay, I guess that's right. I never thought of it that way. I suppose though, Dane knows what Thorin's final attitude was because he says as much. He says, "I would wish the words of Thorin, of which he repented, should not prove true." So he knows that Thorin values Bilbo at the end, so he could be respecting his cousin's wishes there. Also, he knows that Bilbo was the one who was most necessary. He had saved the dwarves' lives. He had found the way in. Bilbo's part isn't just about the Arkenstone at the end. It's about Or you don't hold much stock by that.
I don't know. It just it seems to me like a lot of. He would have had to have been told the story by all the other dwarves in order to be like, yeah, Bilbo, he saved us from the.
But why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he know that at this point?
Why would he know that at this point?
Because Balin and the others would have told him.
Would they?
No, yeah, absolutely.
They certainly didn't seem to care much about it when they were with Thorin and make a big deal out of what Bilbo was doing then. So
yeah, but we see by their farewell that they care deeply about Frodo and they value his friendship quite a bit. And
true,
they can't even speak. So I think that the whole story's out there now. I mean, we're talking about what happened in the weeks following because it talks about the division of treasure isn't like the next day he divides all the treasure. So I think there's plenty of time for them to tell a story. Okay. I think everybody knows the story of Bilbo by that point. And they definitely would have wanted to. They'd be like, how did the dragon leave in the first place? How did it come to Lake Town? They would want to know what happened up to that point. And the Elven King clearly knows what Bilbo did in Mirkwood because there's he makes the joke about may your shadow never grow short lest it be too easy for you to steal.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious hobbitry. It's great. The Elven King knows hobbitry.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on for.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see the point. So, and in the end, Bilbo only takes 2 chests: a chest of gold and a chest of silver. As much as could fit on a small pony. It's funny because he talks about managing it. It's such a British way to talk. I couldn't possibly take more treasure because I couldn't manage it. Which is that he says that will be quite as much as I could manage. It says, but before that he says, how on earth could I have got all that treasure home without war and murder all the way? I don't know. I don't know what I would have done with it when I got home. I'm sure it's better in your hands.
He's seen enough of what a desire for gold and silver can do. I don't think he wants to repeat that on his journey home.
Which, frankly, is one of the great virtues of hobbits, right? They don't. They are not covetous in general. They're not. I mean, so you could say the Sackville Bagginses are, but there's the exception that proves the rule. But hobbits in general are somewhat immune to the acquisitiveness and covetousness that other peoples of Middle Earth are subject to, especially dwarves.
Yeah. All right. So he says his goodbyes to the dwarves. They have
only Balin answers him.
And well, yeah, he's the only one who ever really answered him in the book anyway.
That's right. Fili and Kili.
And they're gone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they have this nice little interplay where the dwarves are rather formal in their response, and Bilbo is nicely informal and says, "Don't wait to knock," which is a nice callback to, like, the knocking originally in the verse. Tea is at 4, but any of you are welcome at any time, which is the counterpoint. Right now, the relationship has totally changed. He didn't want them there. When will they finally leave? And now he's got to, but he's warring with his hospitality and offers up his rooms for them to stay. But now he's like, no, you're welcome at any time. So it's sort of a full circle moment all the way back to when he first met the dwarves and didn't want them in his house, and now he's welcoming them into his house as friends, really friends in arms, right? That they've gone through so much together, and so their relationship is more so than any spoken relationship, right? It's created, but by relationships are created more deeply through experiences than with just words, and so the experiences they've had, despite they may not have shared a whole lot of words, has driven them together closely, and so he's willing to welcome them at any time. But now he leaves, and he leaves in a great sort of in this. I love that he leaves with the legends of Middle-earth in a way, right? Gandalf and Bilbo rode behind the Elvenking, and beside them strode Beorn once again in man's shape, and he laughed and sang in a loud voice upon the road. He's like, it's just this little vision of, like, the little guy who did everything, but there's the wizard, and there's the not who did everything, but there's the Elvenking, and then there's Beorn who did a whole lot too. But he's with them, and that's sort of like a visual representation of how Tolkien wrote his stories. Like, put those hobbits in un-hobbit-like situations, and this is what you end up with: the shapeshifter, cool. The wizard, and the Elvenking, leaving the battle together. That then somehow they all had an important part to play. But it leads to the Elvenking's and Bilbo's discussion, which probably for me is the most interesting one, because it goes back to the whole idea that Bilbo decided to stay with the elf. Remember, he would defend the Elvenking. Maybe that was just him wanting to be in a place where he felt like he was more safe than being with dwarves. Or two, it was because his relationship with the dwarves at that point had been somewhat fractured. And so that was the other thing. Or it could have been that he liked elves. He's a hobbit, right? And hobbits have this sort of relationship, or this idea that the elves are mystical and they want to be near them, and they have a great interest in elvendom.
Right. I would go with a little bit of columns A, B, and C. I think.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Go ahead. You're going to say something. Or were you?
Oh, I was just going to bring up his
go for it.
The Elvenking. We begin with the Elvenking and Gandalf saying goodbye to each other, and then Bilbo's like really embarrassed. And begins stammering and standing on one foot, and he asks the Elvenkings to accept a gift, and that begins the dialogue between Elvenking and Bilbo, which is really cool that you were talking about, where he says he wants to give him a gift of necklace and pearls. So clearly he knows, like, I guess, what the Elvenking likes. I mean, the Elvenking's already got Girion's jewels, and that's much more to his liking. But the Elvenking is this is not the Thranduil of the books. This is a This is a wise and kindly king, and so because he speaks to Bilbo in a manner of great respect. He says, "In what way have I earned such a gift, O Hobbit?" He doesn't say, like, "Well, I guess thanks. I'll throw it on the pile," or or as is only right, or something arrogant.
I want to. This is the callback is to I don't even remember which chapter this is. I just had to look it up. He had a weakness for treasure, especially for silver and white gems, which is pearls and silver and white gems. So it is exactly, it's exactly what speaks to him the most, what he has his heart desires the most.
Good callback.
And
then Bilbo turns it into I kind of regret being a burglar statement. So he says, "Well, I thought, don't you know," said Bilbo, rather confused, "that some little return should be made for your hospitality. I mean, even a burglar has his feelings. I have drunk much of your wine and eaten much of your bread."
Like, I have to admit, I love that. And he's got to be like, wait, did he know at that point? Had they had discussions prior to this that Bilbo had revealed what he had actually done in the halls of the
I think he has to know. This is why I think the story is fully known by everyone there, because the Elvenking immediately, like, he takes it up that he continues that dialogue in a way that is there's no surprise for what Bilbo. Oh, what you mean? You were in my halls? When were you? Or anything like that. I think he knows the story. He says, "I will take your gift, O Bilbo the Magnificent," said the king gravely, "and I name you elf friend and blessed. May your shadow never grow less, or stealing would be too easy. Farewell." I mean, that part right there, like where he's referencing the fact that Bilbo stole from him while he was there, while he was in his halls and stuff, and he's making a joke out of it. And he's also being noble and gracious. He calls him Bilbo the Magnificent, which is a little bit tongue in cheek. I know he's playing up the part, but he names him elf friend and blessed, and that's not a. There's nothing ironic about that. That's just giving someone a name, naming someone elf friend, actually bestows a certain grace in Tolkien's world. This happens with the Min in Beleriand. This happens with all the elf friends that are when the hobbits are named elf friend in the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And
Gimli
so
is also named elf friend.
Gimli. Yeah, that's right. Gimli is named elf friend. Probably the first dwarf, maybe ever. Well, no, I guess some of the elves of Belagost and Nargothrond.
Maybe, but explicitly named elf friend would be Gimli.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And isn't that also these elf friends are the only ones who sail to Valinor ultimately in the end? That
is true. I wonder if that's. I don't think the Elven King has the power to bestow that grace because he's not. He's
true.
He is a more Quendi. He is a dark elf in the sense that he's not seen the light.
He's never been there either.
Never been there either. Yeah. So I don't think he can give that grace, but he can give the grace that comes attendant with being a friend of the elves.
Yeah, but being a friend of an elf is one thing, but being a friend of Beorn is, I think, is an even better thing.
Good segue.
Thank you. And it's clear because they end up staying there for quite a while at Beorn's house. He really enjoys it, right? Of course, there's the flowers. It's good food. It's good nature. Good nature. It's good. I don't know. Husbandry. It's everything good that the hobbits like, and they stay there a while. But I think even more important than that is that this is, I think, where you get that vision of the greater world that Tolkien wants to tell, but he doesn't in the story. He has this idea about Beorn. And I'm just going to read that whole line because it just speaks to me of like how much it would have been great to have a bigger Beorn story. Beorn indeed became a great chief afterwards in those regions and ruled a wide land between the mountains and the wood. And it is said that for many generations, the men of his line had the power of taking bear's shape, and some were grim men and bad, but most were in heart like Beorn, if less in size and strength. In their day, the last goblins were hunted from the misty mountains, and a new peace came over the edge of the wild. I would have loved to see this culture, the civilization, in a sense, that Beorn ruled over as a great chief. Like, what was born out of that? What became that? We'll talk about that in an extended podcast. But yeah, again, it's one of those times where the glimpse of what Tolkien had in his mind, he lets the door slightly slide open so we can see in, and then he closes it right away, and we get to sort of just wish and hope that there was more to it than that.
There's as a connection to the modern landscape that some of our listeners will know, as I often reference the online game Lord of the Rings Online, which is the most faithful to Tolkien of any modern adaptation of anything, as much as you could be in an MMO. But you can play a Beorning, a person from the line of Beorn. And of course, the Lord of the Rings happens at the 70 plus years on from the Hobbit.
Right.
And so you're fully into like the generation, a couple of generations down from Beorn. And so you have, and they reference all that. They reference like the hunting of the goblins of the Misty Mountains, and like your peoples are rulers of that land, of the Wilderland between Misty Mountains and Mirkwood. And they do a really good job of adapting that sort of reality and how you would be, how a Beorning of that line might be connected might reconnect to the tale of the Lord of the Rings, which is cool. So yeah, it's always been a fun. It's just a great teaser into, as you said, another story that Tolkien never told, but he tells us the beginning of it, or at least the faintest outlines of it.
Yeah. It's not filled in. It is just the outlines. Eventually, they leave in the spring.
Right, so they stay at least a few months because
Yeah.
they arrive before Yuletide, which which we're told is a few days before the end of the year, by Hobbit reckoning, and
They make it. They make it over the mountains. They come upon the long road and reach the very pass where the goblins had captured them before. So remember in the caves when they were captured. So in that pass, then he could still see far away was the lonely mountain, and the edge of eyesight on its high peak, snow yet unmelted, was gleaming pale. And I want to just read this last paragraph that he ends this chapter with. So comes snow after fire, and even dragons have their ending, said Bilbo, and he turned his back on his adventure. The Tookish part was getting very tired, and the Baggins was daily getting stronger. I wish now only to be in my own armchair. Is it that he's further away from battle, he's further away from the excitement, and now, he's starting to relax a little bit? The Tookish side is taking a breather, the Baggins side is coming in. Or have they found, and we'll talk about this in the extended podcast, which we'll get into in a minute, have they found equilibrium? Is it always a battle inside of him for more, or for more home, or for more adventure? Or is it that they live in harmony at some point? Because he does stay in Bag End for quite a while. It's not like he's always leaving, though he does. It's not like he always leaves. But at this point, like, he's had enough. He wants to be in his armchair. He wants a comfy seat for his bottom. No more hard rocks. No more horses. No more ponies. It's interesting. So comes snow after fire, and even dragons have their ending. So comes snow after fire. So even in the fire can be doused by the snow of the cold. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what that phrase means. If there must be a reference to that somewhere else, or maybe it comes from something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is, and I can't think of one in Tolkien, but maybe we're just not thinking of it. But I think from a natural point of view, like, fires in nature are a natural part of the world, and after every fire, there will always, in other words, the fire never rages forever and doesn't destroy everything, but it's quenched by the snow, and then a new season comes. And then one might add, and then after the snow comes the spring and the buds, and you're on mute.
Bam. Snow is sort of it's the refreshing. It's the blanket that covers over all the destruction, right? It's peaceful. That's sort of the sighing sound of the wind over the blowing across the top of the snow, and no other sound. It's just a very peaceful and renewing vision, I guess. So after everything burns, right? If you see a forest that's been burned and then covered in a great snowfall, it looks beautiful again. And despite the worst fires, the worst destruction, things can be remade again. Maybe that's the best way of looking at it. And now he just wants to go in his armchair. And I think that's it. That's the end of the book. Oh wait, no. There's a whole nother chapter.
You forgot, Jonathan, about the last stage.
He's not totally returned.
Which is appropriate. What I don't know is why it isn't all one chapter, but
I'll tell you why. Because he had to write a song that starts at the very beginning of the next chapter, and he realized, I got to spend time on it.
Hold on. Is this the one chapter? Did we get the one chapter where it says he says there was no song? This is when he wakes up, and he says there was no song from anyone. So he mentions song, but the lack. And this is the chapter. There is no song in this chapter. My universal has been shattered.
Oh, man. Yeah, and plus we get the Tralalalali elves somehow. Tolkien had to bring them back. Definitely different than the others. But we'll get that into the last stage. And if you want to hear the last stage of this podcast, you can get it by going, man, if I can get my words right, by going to theonering.com/member or theonering.com/Patreon. You can get the extended podcast, and you can chat with us tonight if you are actually a member already. Sorry, chumps. And we'll talk about Beorn and the Beorn that could have been, and also the Tookish and the Bag Inside fighting each other out in Bilbo's, I don't know, in the psyche, or however you say that. I'm trying to think of a good way of saying it. It's just not coming out. So anyway, guys, we're getting into the extended podcast. We'll see you on the other side.
Take care, freeloaders.